Is this the end of the everlasting row with Europe?
I believe so.
You gotta laugh.
Yes, for Britain in Europe.
Britain shall remain a member of the European community.
Membership of the common market means that decision-making and jobs become less secure.
Mr. Delors, no, no, no.
I don't want to be the emperor of the Europe, no.
Good for the economies of the whole of Europe.
Pro-Europe or anti-Europe, that is a lunatic discussion.
I'm determined that we should play our full part in Europe.
My partner can't even get a job because we've got the Polish.
We should divorce ourselves amicably from political union.
In,
out,
in,
out.
shake it all about.
I'm fed up of having to raise this question.
Brits divided and they are outside of decision-making.
Britain will not be paying €2 billion to anyone on the 1st of December.
I was wondering whether this was going to be a lively forum.
OK, should we pay up on this 1.7 billion, Nigel?
Well, I think we should just tell them to get stuffed, frankly. No, quite honestly, politically, it's a gift to UKIP, absolutely. And as you know, Jean-Claude Juncker is taking over the European Commission. He's a smoker, a keen beer drinker, and something possibly a UKIP plant. I loved seeing the Prime Minister.
That's the nicest thing you've ever said about Jean-Claude Juncker, but never mind.
I normally say things about them and they find me, so I've tried to sort of turn over a new leaf. It was interesting, the Prime Minister there was very clear. We will not be paying this money before the 1st of December. What he really means is they won't pay it until after the Rochester by-election. Then we will pay it because they're the rules of the club.
Okay,
there's no point complaining about it. We've joined this club, it has its rules, either we abide by the rules or we say the club's not for us.
So where we are now, would you pay it?
Well, I wouldn't pay it, and I wouldn't pay the current membership fee. I mean, we're already paying £55 million a day.
But we are in the club until we leave, which we haven't yet.
Well,
would you pay it, or are you saying you'd never pay it?
I am saying we've now reached a moment with this and with the fact that the Prime Minister is going to get nothing on free movement of peoples. The Germans have made it clear at the weekend it's not even up for discussion. And frankly, let's have a referendum next Thursday and sort this matter out.
But we're not going to, so would you pay it today, just out of interest?
I wouldn't, no.
Never?
Never.
OK, Sarah, we should pay up?
We don't have it, do we?
No.
Oh, well, I'm sure George would look down the back of the sofa. He seems to find quite a lot else down there.
We can't borrow it. And what's our interest on our borrowing currently?
Well, 59 billion, if you believe your...
There you go. It's a lot of money.
Husband's government, but, that's what they say.
So,
but do you think we should pay, then?
No.
Never?
No. Absurd.
David?
I don't know. Look, I don't know anything about Europe. Oh, my God, listening to people talk about Europe, most people have no idea about our financial relationship to the EU. I don't really understand how Nigel has managed to create such a huge head of steam talking about such a dull subject. I mean, who honestly is interested in the EU? I don't know. Do you know? Do you know whether we should pay it or not?
Europe is my least favourite topic out of everything to write about.
I'm glad we picked it, honestly.
But I will say that it is, this subject is a gift to Nigel, because, I don't think many people engage with the subject. I don't think that when the news comes on, I think they drift, and then you do see, you go, £1.7 billion, what do they want that for? And you do, it threw up questions for me. Should we pay it? We kind of have to.
Can we not pay it?
We kind of have to.
But, this government is cracking down on tax evasion, right? So if an ordinary citizen gets a bill from the revenue that says, well, we've changed our figures a bit, you have to pay this, you have to pay it.
And they'll fine you if you don't pay it.
I think so. I'm not...
But the key thing is the thing that it shows is that Europe is an absurd. The whole EU is just absurdly complicated and difficult to understand. The fact that two incredibly intelligent people find it an incredibly boring subject, and yet it makes so many of our it dominates our legislation. We give it a lot of money. It's a huge.
Okay, but let's move it on to the big issue, if you like, which is freedom of movement. Which is do you believe David Cameron when he says that he's going to be able to?
He can't. He can't do it. The rule of the rule.
He says he can.
But he can't, because we don't have a choice. As you say, we're part of that club. We are duty bound to take migrants from Europe. We don't have a choice.
Do you think
can't set a cap.
Do you think it's inevitable that we're on the path to the exit then?
I think it's up to the British people. I think they need to they need to decide. But as you say, it's very difficult because no one's terribly interested. It is a very, very boring subject.
Does the sort of whole notion of freedom of movement bother you?
No, not at all. Of course not. I mean, apart from anything, I'm an immigrant. I'm from refugee stock. My mother was born in Nazi Germany. She wouldn't have been able to come here if Britain didn't have an incredible tradition of tolerance towards people from Europe who might be under pressure coming in. And Nigel will say, of course, there's lots of people coming here who shouldn't be here properly and blah, blah, blah. But the fact is, we live in an incredibly tolerant country, and I would like to think that we would keep up that tradition. As far as I'm aware as well, most people who come actually end up paying more tax than they draw out in benefits.
Well, David, what you're saying... David, what you're saying, you are comparing two entirely different things. You know, when my family first came to Britain, as political refugees, Protestants from France, and indeed when Jews came to this country from Russia and then from Germany, and then Idi Amin wanted to kill all the Asians in Uganda, and we said, OK, you can come, you were talking about movements into the country of 25,000 people. We're now talking about 500,000 people here come into the country,
okay,
a net 4 million over the last 13 years. So we're talking about something of a completely different scale.
I just want to interrupt you for 1 second, because there's a very interesting survey in City AM today, you may have seen, which suggests the places where you're strongest is the places where immigration is at its lowest.
Yeah, I believe...
That's the survey that was in this... And I just wonder whether what you're playing into is fear of immigration, not people's negative experience of immigration.
If you go to Lincolnshire or parts of the Fens where UKIP's at its strongest, what you will see over the course of the last 10 years is migration into those towns and cities on a scale that people simply can't believe.
But what about London,
I reject
Nigel?
it.
Why do you do so badly in London, where there's a lot of immigrants?
We don't do badly in outer London.
Right, but London...
We do badly in central London, and that's certainly true.
Grace, what's your feeling about, both on David, David Cameron's office promised to do something about freedom of movement. Do you believe him? Does it something that bothers you? Do you see it bothering people around you?
I think that's really fascinating, that what you're saying about the survey, because my experience of where people are really, really behind you is where the immigration is very, very low, and it's kind of a fear that, you know, if you tolerate this, then your town will be next, and you know, that's what I see. That's all I'm saying.
Well, so it's all well and good for people in central London who earn lots of money, live in expensive houses and have a very nice life. For them, mass immigration actually has been brilliant.
Nick, can you stop?
Because it's cheaper nannies.
There's lots of people saying no.
Cheaper chauffeurs. Hang on, cheaper chauffeurs and cheaper gardeners.
Cheaper chauffeurs.
But if you... Oh, absolutely. Well, of course.
Who are these people with cheaper chauffeurs you're referring to?
The rich in London who've benefited hugely from this. And similarly,
Russians.
You could argue for big business. Well, in many cases, yes. In many cases, yes. But you could argue it's good for big corporations. You could argue it's good for big agribusinesses. The argument you can't make is that open-door immigration over the last 10 years has been good for the average man or woman whose wages have been... Otherwise, why would there be double the number of people now earning the minimum wage than there were 10 years ago?
Look, I'm not a politician. I really hate statistics and I'm rubbish at it, OK? But I said something before which I believe to be true, and perhaps you can tell me, which is, as far as I understand it, immigrants pay more in taxes overall than they draw out in benefits.
No, not...
That isn't true?
Well, that isn't true because what it doesn't include are the in-work benefits. So if you come to Britain tomorrow...
That sounds like a detail to me.
No, because it means child benefit, tax credits,
I
access
recall
to the National
covering
Health
the
Service,
OBR's comments on it, Robert Cho's comments on this, so let's just put it into context. What he actually said is that immigrants are a net benefit to the public finances, as you know, because they tend to go home and they don't, therefore, get old and live off social security and all the rest of it. That is true.
But we're not costing in. We're not costing in tax credits, child benefit, and all those other things. Look, even if, you know, argue this whichever way you want, even if the economics of this are about zero, whether it's good or bad for the country, even if it's that, is it a good thing that so many of our working population, their take-home pay is less than it was 10 years ago? I would say it's a bad thing.
Sarah, is this argument about heart over head, and particularly on that survey, which I must admit did surprise me a bit, this idea that, I mean, in one way it's perfectly logical. You might say people want their communities to stay the same, not change, but it is interesting, if true, that, you know, people with high levels of immigration seem more relaxed about it than people with low levels of immigration.
Yes, because of course, if you live in a community where there are lots of different types of people, you're not scared of anyone. I mean, it's because I would just say that this whole European, you know, this movement between countries is no bad thing. My parents emigrated to Italy in the 70s, and they've never come back. And you know, it does work two ways. I mean, you can...
People don't find that surprising who live here, you know, of course.
I know, well, they went, you know, during the 3-day weekend. I'm the only one in my family who's come back. And, you know, I think that other cultures are hugely interesting and beneficial to our country. And I think if we were just to say no to all of that, that would just be madness. I do think you've just got to rein in the emotion on this a little bit, and I do think perhaps Nigel is a bit guilty of ramping that up.
OK, well, hold on a sec. We'll come to emotion in...
is we want to have control.
Okay.
That's all.